Hi, I'm John Knoll, software trainer for Adobe, and this video is all about integrating your Creative Cloud applications with Premiere Pro. We do this through a process called dynamic linking, and it's one of the best features of the Adobe ecosystem. Your applications can actually talk to each other, and changes in one app will be reflected in another when they're updated. Let me show you how it works. So here's a quick overview of all of the Adobe video apps that you can dynamically link back and forth to. We, of course, start with Premiere Pro. We also have After Effects, Audition, Character Animator, and Media Encoder. You notice they're all the same color. We updated the colors a while ago so that they're all the same across all the video applications. Quick tip here, you want to have all of them on the same year release version in order for them to talk to each other. Version 24 Premiere Pro cannot talk to version 23 of After Effects, for example. Media Encoder version 22 can't talk to Premiere Pro 24 either. They all have to be on the same year release. The dot release will not affect that, although typically you want them all to be on the same dot release. But as long as they are on the same year release, they will see each other and will talk to each other through dynamic link. Now, Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator also work with Premiere Pro. I'll show you those at the end of this video, but the versions of those two applications don't matter as much. It's not as crucial as it is with the video applications with dynamic linking. Okay, now let me show you one of the most common uses for dynamic linking in Premiere Pro, which is to send clips to After Effects. Okay, I've got a sample ad here, and I want to send some clips to After Effects for some motion graphics work. And let me find my shot here. So I'm going to send this one to After Effects. First thing I'm going to do is duplicate it. This is very important because once you send something to After Effects, you're not going to be able to revert it easily back to the original clip should you need to do that. So I always recommend you either duplicate the entire sequence or duplicate each individual clip before you send it to After Effects. In this case, I'm going to duplicate the clip. I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt key and just drag up. And now I have a copy of that clip right above it. And I'm going to right click on that and replace with After Effects composition. Now, I already had After Effects open, and if you did not have After Effects already launched, it would launch it for you and create a blank project. If you want everything to go into the same After Effects project, just have it already open, and then anything you send from that Premiere Pro project will go into the same After Effects project. Here's the shot here. You see it's now in a comp. And let me just enlarge that a little bit. I'll go set that to fit. There we go, nice and big. And there's the clip. And notice up here, it also brought in the clip as well. So we have the full clip loaded, and it respected the in and out points of that clip on the original timeline in Premiere. If we go back to Premiere, you'll see that that duplicate of the clip has now been replaced with an After Effects composition. And that also is going to be in the bins. If we go into our project here, you'll see that there is also an After Effects comp loaded right here. And if I pull that in the source viewer, we can see that. So this is pulling directly from After Effects right now. And any changes we make to this comp in After Effects will reflect back into Premiere Pro through dynamic linking. And I already have some things kind of pre-made here, so I'm just going to pull that up. I have this animation here where I've tracked the shot and put the logo of the company Drip back here behind our athlete, and I've gone ahead and rotoed her so she's on her own layer on top of this graphic. It took me a little while. I didn't want to force you to sit there and watch me do all of this, and I can actually drag and drop these to the other comp here because the timing is all the same here. So I'm going to take that top layer, which is the rotoed athlete. I'm going to take that logo right there, and I think I need the null. In fact, I'm just going to take everything. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it into this one here. And I've basically replaced what was in there. That's fine. Now that original clip that was at the bottom layer of this comp is no longer relevant. That's okay. There's roto brush needs to happen in there. I'm going to hit save, and when I go back to Premiere, there it is. All right, it took a second for it to update, but now that is pulling directly from After Effects and showing me those effects in real time. If I were to go back to After Effects and change something, I'll just remove the graphic real quick. Go back to Premiere. You see it changes there. So it's pretty fast. And again, this is dynamic linking. Everything you do in After Effects will ripple back through to Premiere. All right, I'm still getting some decent real-time playback as well, even though this bar is red. Now typically I would render shots like this here in the timeline, but there's another trick to doing that, which is to do a render and replace in the timeline. If you're basically done in After Effects and you're locked into the changes that you've made, you don't have to render out from After Effects. And that's the genius of dynamic linking. I don't have to go back into here to After Effects and add this to the render queue and export a ProRes or something and bring it back into Premiere Pro. I can just leave this comp in Premiere and it will export. Now, sometimes exporting with these After Effects comps in your timeline can take a little while, because basically what Premiere Pro does is it loads a headless version of After Effects kind of in the background, and every time it has to read one of these linked comps, it will pull from that headless version of After Effects. You don't have to have After Effects open, and that can slow things down, especially if you have a lot of these on the timeline. So a great option to avoid that is go to Render and Replace. And what this is going to do is generate a file that Premiere Pro will read instead of this After Effects comp, and it's going to kind of just bake in the animation at its current state. So I'm going to choose QuickTime, Match Source, ProRes 422. That sounds great. It allows you to put that someplace. You can either choose your scratch disk, or you can put that in another location and even give it handles. And if you hit OK, it's going to basically do a transcode right there on the timeline. Now, the appearance won't change, but over here in the bins, you see it's generated a QuickTime clip of that After Effects animation right there. And notice that the line turned yellow instead of red here on the timeline. So every time Premiere Pro hits that clip, either on playback or export, it's going to use that rendered ProRes 422 file and ignore the original After Effects comp, which will speed things up significantly. But just keep in mind, if you do go back into After Effects and change something, so I'll go back here, and again, I will just remove that logo real quick. That's not going to change that comp here in Premiere Pro, because we did a render and replace, and that kind of locked in its appearance at that point in time. So the way to undo that is to right-click and restore unrendered, and that resets it to its original After Effects comp. You notice that that rendered ProRes file disappeared from the bins over here. It's no longer relevant, and now we're back to the original After Effects comp. Now you can also send multiple clips to After Effects as well. If you'd like, you just lasso a bunch, right click and replace with After Effects composition, and you'll see that it adds it all right there to After Effects. It respects in and out points, and in After Effects comps, everything is on its own layer, so you don't see these stacked together on a V1 anymore. They all have to be on their own layer. They're treated as individual clips and layers, just like they are in Photoshop. Now, quick tip here, if you are doing color effects in Premiere Pro and you want to send the shot to After Effects, the Lumetri color effect will transfer, because Lumetri also exists in After Effects. So I just done a quick color move here on this clip, and I'm going to replace with After Effects composition. That's going to drop it here. And you'll notice if I click on it and go to the effects panel, there's effects controls there, you see I have Lumetri there listed as well. I recommend keeping your Lumetri effect in Premiere Pro. If you go back to Premiere and change your mind, or you want to match this shot to other effects, the Lumetri effect is no longer available to you in Premiere Pro because it was sent to After Effects. So my advice is to add Lumetri once you've already sent it to After Effects. Go back and add the Lumetri effect to that After Effects comp, and it treats it just like a clip, and you can add effects to them here in Premiere Pro. It will not ripple through to After Effects. Anything you do in Premiere at this point will not show up in After Effects, but you can treat these comps just like any other piece of media. Now let's talk about Audition, which is Adobe's digital audio workstation. You can send clips or entire sequences to Audition, mix and sweeten your audio, and then send a finished mix back into Premiere. Let me show you how it works. Now, sticking with my ad here, we can do a lot of audio work right here in Premiere Pro. We can use the Essential Sound panel to enhance audio and remix our music and things like that. But sometimes you want the tools available to you in a digital audio workstation like Audition. So how do we send clips over there? I'm going to select this clip right here.
And I knew that I was the best.
All right. It's already got some Essential Sound going here. I'm just going to clear that out for now. And that clip needs to be sent to Audition. So let me zoom in on that a little bit. There we go. So that's the original WAV file here. And we can hear some background noise.
And I knew that I was.
Let me solo that.
And I knew that I was the best.
All right, so with a lot of background noise there. Again, we could use the enhanced tools here in Essential Sound, but I want to play around with some of the other options in Adobe Audition. So I'm going to right click on that clip and edit clip in Adobe Audition. And just like with After Effects, it dynamically links into Audition, and here is that clip.
And I knew that I was the best.
Adobe Audition, by the way, has two editing modes. We're in waveform mode up here where you just look at individual clips and you modify them, and those changes are saved directly to that audio file. Now, typically you don't want to overwrite your original media like that, but Premiere and Audition are smart enough to make a copy of that file that was sent before any changes are made here in Audition. You see the word extracted there in the file name, and if I go back to Premiere, you'll also see that extracted is what is shown there. And if we reveal that in the project, it's going to show up here. You can see that it made a copy of this audio file that we sent to Audition, and any changes that happen in Audition will ripple back through Dynamic Link and will show up, or you'll be able to hear it here in Premiere. This copy protects your original media, and you can always get back to that on the disk, especially if you want to revert back to the raw sound before you send this out for a mix, for example. You right click and restore unrendered, just like we did for the render and replace. We'll pull back the original WAV file and we'll remove that extracted file that was sent to Adobe Audition. And incidentally, the location of those duplicate clips that it makes to preserve the original media, those are in your Premiere Pro preferences under Audio, and you see down here Render, Edit, and Audition files too. You can choose your scratch disk for captured audio or next to the original media file. So wherever that clip was pulled from, it's going to make that extracted copy right next to it. And again, anything you change here in Audition will ripple back through to the clip that's living on the timeline in Premiere Pro. But what if I want to send an entire sequence here? I want to do a full mix of my Premiere Pro project in Adobe Audition. How would I set that up? Okay, so here is the sequence up here. I'm going to right click on it in the bin, and then I have the option down here to edit in Adobe Audition, and I can choose sequence. And by doing that, so I'm going to call that, and I'll leave that there, and you can set where that goes, and you can select the entire sequence. You can even do an in and out there if you want, and we're going to send the video through Dynamic Link. So I'm just going to leave all those at their defaults and hit OK. And now we're in multi-track mode instead of the waveform mode in Audition. There's still that original clip we sent, but here is the multi-track of that entire ad. So you see that the track labels came through as well. We have lav, VO, sound effects, ambiance, music, and I can do all my work in here if I want. So there's a couple different ways to get this mix back into Premiere Pro. You could do a mix down, so I'll go under Export, Multi-Track Mix Down, Entire Session. And this is going to create an AIF file or a WAV file of this entire session here, and you can just tell that where to go. So I'll put that in the audio folder here for this training project here. There's my audio. I'll just put that right there in the root level. Actually, I'll just do mixes. All right, keep everything nice and organized. There we go. Drip add mix down, save, and that's going to create a stereo file, 48 hertz, 32-bit. Hit OK. And then back in Premiere, I'm going to go ahead and import that mix. So let me go to that same folder here, mixes. There it is. Import. And now I've got the stereo mix. And then very quickly, I can add a couple of tracks here. So in fact, I only need one. So I'm going to add one audio track after that last track there, which is music. I don't need any extra video tracks. And there we go. Let me skinny all these up. And I'll just drag that down here. That is the final mix that was sent from Audition, and you just solo that or mute all the other ones or even disable them so that you don't have to worry about them accidentally winding up in the final mix there, and you get a duplicate. The other way to do it here in Audition is to go to Export, and you can send that to Adobe Premiere right there. And same thing, it's going to ask you where it's going to go. I'll put that in the same mixes folder I had before, like so. And it's going to export each track as a stem in this case, which was nice because I did some work and I want to keep the exact same channel configuration here, or track configuration that I had in the original Premiere Pro sequence, and I want individual tracks to come through. And this is actually going to create a little XML file. All right, and I get the option here to copy to active sequence on a new audio track, or I can pick the track. In this case, I'm going to pick that audio 6. There we go. And actually created a whole bunch of new tracks there for me, starting with audio 6, which is that new track we just created. And you see it brought in full tracks from that audition session, and they're even named after the original audio track names here in Premiere Pro. So in this case, I would have duplicated the sequence here, so I'll do that very quickly. And I'll call this one mixed, like so. Open that one up. And this is a case where I'm going to pop that window nice and big with my tilde key. I'm going to select all of those tracks. I'm just going to bring them up and replace all those originals in this duplicate here. And I can clean it up by going to delete tracks and remove all those empty tracks just to get them out of the way. So basically now I have a full stem for each of my original audio tracks, and that way I don't have just one stereo mix file for the entire sequence here, and I can choose to do a multi-channel output if I want to have all these stems as individual channels in the output file. Now, Character Animator is an application for making animations in real time using your webcam and a rigged character called a puppet. I won't go into too much detail about that program here, but I wanted to mention that you have the option to import your Character Animator scenes directly through Dynamic Link, and any changes you make in Character Animator will also update in Premiere. To do this, all you have to do is go to the Import menu in Premiere Pro, select your Character Animator project, and then pick the scene that you want to import. And it works in After Effects as well. And finally, Media Encoder also uses Dynamic Link. When you send to Media Encoder from Premiere Pro, you're actually loading the entire sequence into the queue, and that allows you to export separately while still being able to work in Premiere. All right, I'm going to send this sequence now to Media Encoder. We've got all of our mixed audio, we've got our After Effects, and we have our little Character Animator buddy here at the end of the sequence. Two ways to send this to Media Encoder. We can go to File, Export, Send to Media Encoder. That's going to send this right away without going through the media export step. But we could also go to that tab here at the top. That's also another way to get to this export tab here. And here is where I can set up all of my options. I'm just going to go to my preset list here and match source adaptive high bitrate, which is going to give me a very nice high quality MPEG-4 file. And then down here at the bottom right, I can send that to Media Encoder. Either one of those ways works. This is dynamically linking, as I mentioned, and if I go to Media Encoder in the queue, I see the little PR symbol. This is that Premiere Pro sequence linked to Media Encoder. It's in the queue. I can still change the presets here, or I can click on it. I can add more outputs with this button up here, and this one I could just do a quick audio export if I want to, and tell it where to go. In this case, I need to set that exports folder. Still need to set up these things before we can export here. So here's my project. There we go. Same thing for this one. Same folder. Like so. Put that there. And then just hit the green button up here in the upper right hand corner, and it's going to go through. Now notice it's pulling from Premiere down here. It's taking a second. I'm actually getting a little beach balling. Now when you're back in Premiere, you can keep editing while that is exporting, but this will take some time sometimes, depending on the complexity of the sequence, to pull it into Media Encoder and get to work. And if that's taking too long, you can always export kind of a master file in a good format, like let's say ProRes 422 or ProRes 422 HQ. And this is going to give you a high quality ProRes output. And we're just going to put that in that same exports folder here real quick. There we go. So I'll put that in there, and I'll just export that out of Premiere Pro, which is relatively quick. And then I will drop that in Media Encoder right here, and I'll go, there's that export menu right there. There's my ProRes file. I'll drop that in, and that one I will make an H.264, and I'll use that match source high bitrate preset right there, and that will speed up the process because it's only reading that ProRes file and not the entire Premiere Pro sequence. So if you do have a complex sequence that's very long and there's a lot of layers and After Effects comps and things like that, it will be rather slow to export. Consider making a full high-res master quality output, ProRes, MXF, DNX HD, something like that, out of Premiere Pro and then dropping that into Media Encoder and use that to make your MPEG-4 outputs, for example. Now, Photoshop and Illustrator can also work with Premiere Pro this way. You can import your artwork, and then if you make changes to those original files, they'll update in Premiere as well. Okay, I'm here in Adobe Photoshop. I've got an image here with 4 separate layers. I have my subject here at the top layer. There's some text. I have this kind of color wash here with a different blend mode, which is affecting the appearance of these lights here on the background layer. And I want to bring in all of these layers as separate elements so I can animate them inside Premiere Pro. So let's switch back to Premiere. I'm going to go to the import window. There it is. I'm going to select it and hit import. At the top here, we've got merge all layers. This is essentially going to flatten the entire image. So if I hit OK, what it's going to bring in is this single graphic like this, which is fine, but it doesn't give me the flexibility that I was hoping for with being able to animate all these layers separately. So I'm going to delete that and import it again. Go back here to the import window, select it again, hit import, and this time, instead of saying merge all layers, I'm going to bring it in as a sequence. All right, and when I hit OK now, what it does is it brings it in as its own sequence. So here, I'll open it up there, and there are all 4 layers. There's the subject, there's that wall of text, there's that color, complete with its blend mode, and you'll see that that came through here up here in effects controls. It came in as hue. And then I can take those and I can animate them separately if I want. I just have a lot more flexibility if I bring them in this way. I have a lot more fun with my graphics. And you'll notice too that because it was brought in as a sequence, sequences have media in them, and all of these were brought in as individual graphics for all the layers over here as well. So you can drop those into other sequences if you want, make new graphics out of them, mix and match. So bringing them in as a sequence allows you to do all of these things. And again, through dynamic linking, if I were to make a change back here in Photoshop, so I'm going to select that color and I'm going to fill that layer with a different color. So I'll just choose something very different from orange there. I'm going to go with green and I'll hit save in Photoshop. And let's pop back here to Premiere. And there we go. We can see that that color did indeed update, and there is that layer here. And we can see that that did indeed change to green. So the image will update in Premiere when you save changes to it in Photoshop. The only thing that it won't do is add a new layer if you add one in Photoshop, because it didn't already exist in the image stack in Premiere Pro. So for example, I'm going to duplicate this bounce text here. Just duplicate layer like so, and I'll move it up a little bit, and I'll really drop that opacity just to give it some difference there, and then I'll hit save in Photoshop here. Wait for it to finish. Go back over here to Premiere. Notice that that second text layer did not appear here in our sequence that represents the Photoshop file, nor did we get another graphic over here in the bins. So if that's the case and you want to add a layer to that Photoshop document, what you can do is import it again. There's the document. And this time, choose an individual layer. In this case, we're going to just select that the copy of the text there and hit OK. There we have it. So now that brings that in, and I just need to move this up one layer here. And there's my copy. And I just need to adjust the blend mode in this case, which did not come through. So set that back to soft light. And there we go. Now with Adobe Illustrator, things are a little bit different. Here I've got some artwork here. I have 3 different icons on 3 different layers here in this Adobe Illustrator file. And I just saved it as a regular .ai file. Go back in here to Premiere, and I'll just use the regular import command this time. And there is that AI file right there on my disk. Notice that that comes in as a single layer, like so. Unfortunately, we don't have the option to bring in the multiple layers like we did with the Photoshop document. All of the Illustrator layers are flattened when we bring in Illustrator artwork. And the other issue we have here in Premiere is that the artwork, in addition to being flattened, is also rasterized. So you see here, if I enlarge it, it's getting very, very soft and pixelated here on the edges, which is not what we want. When you have vector artwork like the kind you make in Adobe Illustrator, you expect these lines to be nice and crisp and very, very smooth, even at large sizes, and we're not getting that because it's been rasterized at its 100% scale size, which is actually this. That's full size there. So anything above that, it's going to start to fall apart. So unfortunately, the vector information does not carry through to Premiere Pro. But the one thing you can do, of course, is still dynamically link changes. So I'm going to select all three of those pieces of artwork there in Adobe Illustrator, and I'm going to change them to be solid white, and I'll hit save. And we'll go back into Premiere Pro, and you see they did, in fact, update. So the trick there is to, first of all, design them at the correct size. So you see these came in too small, so I would go back here to Illustrator and very simply scale them up to fill a 1920 by 1080 frame or whatever frame size I'm working with, and make sure that they're the right scale to work with. Maybe a little larger than I would need for animation. I can start small and then scale them up. But the best way to really work with vector artwork is to bring it into After Effects, and in there you can have your separate layers as well as the option to not rasterize it, and you can use the full power of that vector artwork to enlarge them as much as you want. Okay, so that's an overview on how to integrate many of the apps in Creative Cloud with Premiere Pro. It's a great system, and as always, I encourage you to try it out for yourself and see how it works. Happy creating. I'll see you on the next one.